So let us set our intention this morning to open our minds, our hearts, our infinite being to the spiritual truth that we are all one with a magnificent power that is unshakable, unconditional force of love. We have talked about mystics, and we've looked at some of their great spiritual truths, but all mystics arrive at this truth first and foremost, that the oneness of God, that we are all extensions of this oneness of God, that we live, move, breathe, and have our very being in this essence. This is who we are. That flow of divine love just moves right through us. It's there all of the time, whether we are aware of it or not. This morning we're going to talk about anchoring ourselves in God's love. No matter what turbulence might be going on in our lives, in our ocean of experience, to keep that whole nautical theme going, so we are anchoring ourselves in this divine love, in this ocean of experiences. So I have a story about, that was told to a New Thought author, who I think most of us know, Eric Butterworth, fantastic author. And it's a story of Archibald J. Cronin. A.J. Cronin was an outstanding fiction writer in the mid-1900s. But he didn't start out that way. He started, in fact, as an adult, as a medical student. He became a doctor in Scotland. His successful career as a novelist might not have been possible if not for one very specific event. While still in medical school, he assisted one of the top surgeons, the most distinguished surgeon in London at the time, and this surgeon became very impatient with his young student. And he said that you will never be a surgeon. You are too inept and too clumsy, he snarled. Though young Cronin graduated well up in his class, he was burdened. He was burdened with this doubt of his own ability through this heavy-handed criticism. It's funny what sticks with us when people say things. It's interesting. He went off into the Western Highlands of Scotland to practice medicine when he graduated. But whenever a patient required even the simplest of surgeries, he would refer them to other surgeons. He would never do the surgery. He would prescribe medicine to them and diagnose them, but he would never do the surgery. One stormy winter day, a frightened lad burst into his office with the news that the son of the minister had been injured badly and was lying unconscious at home. So Dr. Cronin made his way through the ice and snows 3 miles to see what was going on with the young man. And he examined him, and he discovered that his legs were paralyzed, and 4 of his vertebrae were crushed. And this called for one of the most delicate surgeries that could possibly be done at the time in his profession. Nervously, he tried to telephone for another doctor, but all the lines were down, and the railroad was blocked because of this big snowstorm that they were in, and nobody could get through to help him. And he wondered, dare I perform the necessary operation? As soon as he did, he heard the demeaning, contemptuous voice of his former teacher. You will never be a surgeon. You are inept and too clumsy. And he told the boy's father that although he was very sorry, he could not attempt such a delicate operation. But the wise preacher took him aside and said that he would have to perform the operation and that God would help him. Cronin faced what the Bible calls a furnace of affliction. And it was the turning point of his life. In a single moment, he grasped the confidence, tuned into the flow, and was courageous enough to do what had to be done and what only he could do. Calling on a local woman to be his nurse, he administered the anesthetic, and he let the wise, loving support of the minister replace the sneering contempt of his former teacher. Later he wrote this: "All of a sudden, my hands grew steady. My mind grew cool. I felt confidence in myself. The operation was concluded. The healing had begun. I sat by the boy's bed with a sense of deep thanksgiving, because at last I too was free. The greatest experience of my life was when I walked into the other room and said to the family, 'I think he'll do fine.'" So this month, amazing how these voices become beliefs in our minds, but they do. This month, in various ways, we are exploring our reason for being. And my friends, you are here on this earth for one reason, and one reason only: to let God be God in and as and through you. That's why we are here, to express our divinity. So what does this story have to do with that? I think it's a wonderful illustration of just how many of us have allowed something in the past to bury who and what we are truly meant to be. And remember, we are radiant gems. Did a talk on that. We are radiant gems, each one of us. Sometimes we let the debris of erroneous thinking and non-serving beliefs cover up that brilliance of who we really are. Each and every one of us is a brilliant light, a creation of the divine. And if you don't accept this, don't believe this, then it's time to step up and step out. Because each one of us, have unique and beneficial gifts. We really do. But we can't experience them if we don't recognize them and acknowledge this truth. This is a spiritual truth. And not only does this story vividly show us what that something was for Archibald Cronin, but it also shows us the sweet and holy moment that he was set free. When he realized that he was so much more than what one person's opinion of him was. And if we look at the story just on the surface, it looks like freedom was brought about by the love and encouragement of the minister. And of course that helped. But what really happened was in that moment of need, in that scary instant, he connected with the God of his being, with that divinity within him. He connected with it. He connected with something solid, something firm, something sure, something secure, something steady, something dependable, right inside of himself. He grabbed onto it. In fact, he anchored into it. He anchored into the presence of God within him. And we can all do that. We can all do that. So that's why our meditation practices are so important, because we establish a relationship with this indwelling God of our being, this divinity within us. And then in these holy instances, we can connect with it. More accurately, it was the presence of God's love that moved through this surgeon, this doctor. And he allowed that gift of surgery to come through him. And I'm sure many of us can think of instances, I know I can, in our life where we've stepped out in faith, not knowing how, what, when, any of that stuff. But the universe always, always, always provides. It always, when we step out in faith, knowing that we are cared for, we are supported. It's proven itself over and over. These truths are infallible. I truly believe that. And Ernest Holmes wrote in his book, Science of Mind, no matter what emotional storm or what our objective situation may be, there is always something hidden in the inner being that has never been violated. We may stumble, but always there is that eternal voice forever whispering within our ear, that thing which causes the eternal quest, that thing which forever sings and sings. That divine within us sings and sings. So it is my intention and prayer this morning that anyone here who has not yet connected with that sacred, in that sacred holy place within themselves, who has not heard that inner voice whispering, singing in their ear, does so today. And for those who have heard it, that it goes even deeper. And we just take a breath into the depth of that inner reality, the true reality of who we are. My intention and prayer is that we allow the love of God to wash over us, as the song so beautifully says. We let the love of God wash over us. Yes, we do this. And just talking about God's love, really, it doesn't always do the trick. In fact, it doesn't. It's the words. It's the feeling part. The feeling that we are one with this God stuff, and we allow it to wash over us. Charles Fillmore, founder of Unity with his wife Myrtle, in his book, Talks on Truth, wrote, "We may talk about the wisdom of God, but the love of God may be felt in the heart. It cannot be described. And one who has not felt it can have no concept of it from the description of others. But the more we talk about love," he says, "the stronger it grows in the consciousness. And if we persist in thinking loving thoughts and speaking loving words, we are sure to bring into our experience that feeling of great love that is beyond description, the very love of God." All the great mystics have wrote this. All the great religions have talked about this. This is not new, but it is truth that doesn't change. I want to tell you another story that may help bring into your experience the feeling of great love that is beyond description, that may allow the love of God to wash over you. And this is by Jack Canfield, Success Principles, where he writes, a famous research scientist who had made several very important medical breakthroughs was being interviewed by a newspaper reporter who asked him why he thought he was able to achieve so much more than the average person. In other words, what set him apart? And he responded that it all came from a lesson that his mother had taught him when he was 2 years old. He'd been trying to take a bottle of milk out of the refrigerator, and he lost his grip and spilt the entire contents on the kitchen floor. His mother, instead of scolding, being irritated with him, or even punishing him for doing that, it was something that he wasn't supposed to be doing, said, "What a wonderful mess you've made. I've rarely seen such a huge puddle of milk." Well, said no mother ever. But anyway, in the story it goes like this. Well, the damage had been done already, right? So she says, she says, "Would you like to get down and play in the milk before we clean it up?" Indeed, it's an idea. If you haven't had children yet, which I think most people here have or don't want, but you can apply this. So the child is playing in the milk, and she said, "Rarely have I seen such a wonderful mess, and I've never seen such a large puddle of milk. would you like to get down and play in it before we clean it up? And he did. So after a few minutes, she says, you know, but he remembered this because it's in Jack Canfield's book. Whenever you make a mess like this, eventually you're going to have to clean it up, right? So how would you like to clean it up? With a sponge, a mop? She gave him that option. Which would you prefer? So after they finished cleaning up the milk, she said, what we have here is a failed experiment in how to carry a big bottle of milk with 2 tiny hands. Let's go out to the backyard and fill the bottle with water, and we'll practice carrying it together without dropping it. And they did. And because of the mother's love and refusal to get angry or annoyed, the little boy grew up to believe in himself, to realize that it was okay to make mistakes. We talked about that earlier. It's okay, we all make mistakes. And to make major contributions to the world, we need to accept that it's okay. We learn from our mistakes. That's what she taught this 2-year-old boy. Now, I know not all of us had that kind of mother, and understanding that we have so many self-defeating beliefs that we need to clear up. And we can't just blame our mother. It's all of really society, and they could all be great. It's just something we might have misunderstood. But it forms a belief in our mind that holds us back. And those beliefs are non-serving. So the whole idea is then to step out into the support of a loving Creator, because this loving Creator only wants the best for us, only wants us to enjoy our lives. And I hope that story helped you tap into the kind of God love that I'm talking about. It's unconditional. The kind that is ready, willing, and able to nurture and call forth our greatness. And I'm telling you that there is a greatness in each and every one of us. So whether it is Archibald Cronin's story, or the story of a scientist making a significant medical breakthrough, or your own story, God's love is at work in every situation, honing your divine magnificence and ready to call it forth. This is true even when the circumstances of the story are painful and difficult. When you hit a rough patch in the story of your life, here are some promises of God's love that we can use as our anchor. You say, it's impossible. God says, all things are possible. Luke 18, verse 27. You say, I'm too tired. And God says, I will give you rest. Matthew 11, chapter 28. You say, but nobody really loves me. God says, I love you. John 3, verse 16. You say, I can't go on. God says, my grace is sufficient. Corinthians 12, verse 19. You say, I can't figure things out, and God says, I will direct your steps. Proverbs 3, verse 5. You say, I can't do it, and God says, I will direct your steps. And that's from Proverbs also. I can't manage, you say, and God tells you, I will supply all of your needs. Philippians 4, verse 19. You say, I'm afraid. God says, I have not given you the spirit of fear. Timothy 1, verse 7. You say, I'm always worried and frustrated. God says, cast all your cares on me. That's from Peter chapter 5, 7. These quotes from the Bible, it goes on, there's so many quotes like this, are truth reinforced once again. And you will find these truths, the same truths in all the sacred religions of the world. You'll find this God is love is the golden rule. It is absolutely the absolute truth. There is nothing else. So I want to finish this talk this morning with a beautiful reading from Ernest Holmes. So let's just take a breath together. A lot of stories and information here. This is Ernest Holmes. Love is the central flame of the universe, nay, the very fire itself. It is written that God is love, and that we are expressed likeness, the image of this eternal being. Love is self-givingness through creation, the impartation of the divine through the human. Love is an essence, an atmosphere that defies definition and analysis, as does life itself. It is that which is and cannot be explained. It is common to all people, to all animal life, and it is evident of plants to those who love them. Love reigns supreme over all. And he continues, the essence of love, while elusive, pervades everything, fires the heart, stimulates the emotion, renews the soul, and proclaims the spirit. Only love knows love. And love knows only love. Words cannot express its depth or meaning. A universal sense alone bears witness to the divine fact, God is love and love is God. So let's start to affirm that today. God is love, love is God. We are created out of this loving essence, so therefore we deduce that we are love in expression at our very essence. That we have been created out of the love that reigns supreme. Our true nature is that of love. So then, for this week, not just for Valentine's Day tomorrow, let's anchor ourselves in this atmosphere, in this ocean of love. And let us allow it to wash over us. And so it is.